You probably know by now that there's a big controversy going on in Marvel Rivals, and just when it started to feel like it was dying off, Necros decided to start solo queuing as a support to send a message, and instead just made everyone pick their pitchforks back up. For some reason, everyone commenting on it is either too PR trained or way too biased to actually give thought to the problem, so my goal is to give insight onto how team comps are supposed to work, how communities and streamers just naturally ruin games, and how the meta makes strategists feel like the least rewarding role. Also, if you're new here, I'm NotoriousDuB. I am a relatively small creator, so a like goes a long way for me, and if you'd like to support me, simply comment the word more down below if you want more improvement content. At the time of recording this, I'm ranked 22 on Hela and ranked like 48 or something on Punisher, and I don't think that matters a ton, but between that and the time I've spent on League of Legends, I have a good understanding of how team fights are supposed to work. And in Marvel Rivals, it's a little more nuanced because the balanced strategy is designed to make each character feel super powerful, like a superhero, in whatever niche they actually fill, and I think we can all agree they do a great job of that specifically. But that leads to some really frustrating moments, to say the least. There's always exceptions to this, but in general, the tank's job is kind of the micromanager of the entire team. They hold the front line and make sure the enemy team's tanks are playing in a passive hold position. If the other tanks are walking backwards, you take the space they give you, and if they're diving your team, you usually walk with them and slap them until they get back to a passive spot. The support's job is to keep everyone alive, and duelists might not like to hear this, but the tier list of importance to keep alive is 1. Themselves, 2. The other supports on the team, 3. The tanks that are on your team, and finally, number 4, you keep your duelists alive after everyone else is safe. That's just the basis, but there's a lot of gray area there. In general, you just want to keep whoever's in the most danger that's able to be saved alive first. And then the duelist, your job is to provide disruption. It's to make sure the other team's game plan doesn't go the way they expect it to. Which means, if the other team is playing dive, you either peel for your supports and keep them alive, or play dive characters with more initiative than the enemy team's divers. So you can get your dive off and get in their backline before they actually dive yours, making their dive obsolete before it even begins. And that last point is really what a lot of people need to hear. You have to be able to dive first. If you don't have the initiative and your backline is dying before you can get to theirs, just swap to a peel character. Namor, Star-Lord, Wanda, Punisher, and Hela against a lot of different divers. You know the drill, you know who's good against who. And I think where a lot of people get lost a lot is the fact that there are 6 people on a team, leaving perfect room for an off-tank, but for some reason we're not thinking about Marvel Rivals in that capacity. Groot, Magneto, Doctor Strange, Hulk, Emma, and Venom are all decent solo tanks in their own capacity against and with the right team compositions, which leaves Thing, Thor, Captain America, and Penny as perfectly viable off-tanks whose job is to not hold down the front line. Your job as an off-tank is to kind of be like water. Fill the cracks that your team comp has. If that means playing Captain America and chasing around a Jeff or an Iron Fist all game, that's what you should be doing. And the same thing goes for Duelist. Everyone one-trick certain heroes, but if the other team has a Captain America harassing your backline, and you stay on Moon Knight or Squirrel Girl when you could swap to Storm and stop him from diving your backline altogether, then you're kinda trolling the game. That's your problem. The real reason that divers are targeting and killing your support so often is because the role itself is the worst equipped to solo deal with staying alive against divers. They need help. The too long didn't listen version of this whole thing is if you find yourself in a position where you truly don't know how your team is dying, that means that you're not actively stopping and addressing the problem. It takes an entire team to beat the enemy team. And if you are aware of how your team is losing, and it feels like you just can't do anything about it, you're either getting outpicked or getting outplayed, which unfortunately happens every once in a while. A lot of people just don't think about what's happening in-game from that meta perspective. Instead, they hit tab, see whose stats aren't performing up to their standards, and flame them as if they actually have enough game sense to realize what the problem actually was during the game. And that's why I, and a lot of people, say that communities and streamers absolutely ruin games. The problem is that it's no longer about playing the game, it's about chasing the meta. And while the devs are putting out new content, keeping the game fresh, the content creators are playing the game like their life depends on it. Because it literally does. And the honeymoon phase for them wears off faster, the game becomes stale, and they lock on something they think is wrong with the game because of a phenomenon we all experience, a negativity bias. Just like there are literally thousands of streamers making thousands of comments an hour, and I'm not honing in on Necros, that clip was taken out of context from months ago and used as fuel for an uprising. He's actually a great player who's super impulsive, and I doubt this is the last time he gets in hot water, because that's also what makes him an entertaining creator. Whenever someone says one thing that really strikes a nerve, it then becomes the only comment you can even remember at that point. Even though you might have played like 20 games today, You probably got carried a couple of those, but if you had someone throw one of those games, it sticks out way farther in your mind. There really are a million different studies done on negativity biases, and it's something we all experience, but the point I'm trying to make is this. Every game that you play in Marvel, people are gonna die randomly all the time. If it's a duelist, you might not even notice it, but it's not that big of a deal. If it's a tank, you definitely are gonna notice it, but you can still kinda play the game and retreat until they're back alive. But if a strategist dies, randomly, it's a huge deal because it means the game can't really even be played by the rest of your team. And they're probably all going to die and stagger before the strategist even makes it back out of the spawn point. Because the role truly, for sure, has the biggest impact in a standard game where everyone is performing around the same skill level. Which, unfortunately for support players, it makes them the target of most of the negativity bias that happens in the game because they're really the crux point that the entirety of the team revolves around. And every role requires a different type of skill. In-game, you're not supposed to be comparing yourself to your teammates. It doesn't really matter at all if you're mechanically better or worse than any or all of your teammates. Ultimately, if the strategists on your team are better than the strategists on the enemy team, you're gonna win more games than you lose. It all averages out over time. But it doesn't really stop there. Communities and streamers ruin games because they value mechanics and highlight reel plays over literally everything else. I play Hela at a relatively high level on my stream every chance it's available and it's a decent pick, but whenever the team comp needs a Wanda, I'll play Wanda. And without fail, every single time I lock in Wanda, I'll look over at my chat, at some point someone is saying, "Bro, no one wants to watch Wanda, she's boring, she takes no skill." And that's kind of the problem these content communities revolve around. Duelists objectively take the most mechanical skill, somewhat depending on how you define mechanics, but it's generically right. Tank characters, for the most part, require a little bit less mechanical skill, but a bigger understanding of the macro game. And strategists, in general, takes a little bit less mechanical skill than that, but it takes a unique understanding of pressure combined with that macro game sense. Great support players have this natural instinct to feel where pressure is coming from. They naturally feel sightlines and optimize the amount of time they're being seen by the enemy Hawkeye and how often they have their tanks in their view, and no other role really has to have a feel for pressure like support does. And that very unique feel for pressure that strategists have to kind of develop and play around is occasionally made completely obsolete by the metagame, unfortunately. Marvel Rivals, in my opinion, has by design a design flaw when it comes to how assassins work. And I'm talking about specifically assassins. Venom and Captain America types aren't really included in this. When you look at the balance strategy of other games, assassins are balanced around their ability to get a kill. It's high risk, high reward, and a lot of times that reward for getting a kill is either a way out of the fight or a way to create more kills. Like in League of Legends, Akali gets resets, Katarina gets resets, Twitch gets his stealth, yada yada, but in Marvel Rivals the assassins aren't really that high risk. Black Panther, who I don't personally view as a problem assassin, but a lot of people do, has insanely large hitboxes on his abilities, he has survivability, and pretty consistent escape capability, combined with the fact that the audio cues his abilities have don't actually allow you to track him very well. As a Hela, watching for him from a distance, he's pretty easy to kill, but as a Punisher, he's dashing through, and hitting him is almost impossible. And even if he fails to get a kill, he's usually just free to leave. Spider-Man is very similar in the fact that his combo automatically hits if he lands one auto attack, and he still has like 3 web swings to get away when he only really needs 1. Magic has invulnerability whenever she dashes, and Iron Fist is absolutely immortal. But I believe Iron Fist is actually the one assassin, more of a bruiser really, that is properly designed. Every ability he uses has a trade-off whenever he uses it, and to finish off a kill that's kind of difficult to get, he has to use his kick, which is usually his last chance of escape. And the list goes on. But while the assassins have all of these different tools, strategists have almost nothing to deal with them. So my suggestion is this. Maybe this is a hot take, but assassins need to do more damage. Their combos need to be more difficult to pull off, and their escapes need to be tied into their damage to some degree. So if they want to commit to a kill truly, they have to use their escape to make it happen, making it a little bit higher risk. You need to increase their damage and skill requirement, and increase their risk to make them more fun to play and more fun to play against. Strategists' current viability against assassins, as viewed by the current player base, is their ability to live against these assassins. But that kind of just compounds the problem, because while in most games living against these assassins leave the assassin in a risky position, in Marvel Rivals the assassin is instead capable of fully resetting almost instantly every single time to wait 12 seconds on cooldowns to reset and then try it again. But I think I've belabored the point about divers. It is what it is. In my opinion, there's a huge missing link on how many heroes there actually are for the role. At the time of recording this, there are actually more duelists in the game than tanks and strategists combined, and strategists have the least overall. And whenever you boil it down even further to how many strategists have the healing power to actually keep the team alive, you're now down to like 4. And one of these have to be played every single game to be viable in the meta, meaning role diversity is at an atrocious level to maintain, and the role itself gets stale very quickly. And this next one's perspective, and I hope this doesn't come true, this could age like wine or it could age like milk, but the next strategist set to come to Marvel is Ultron. He has drones he can put on allies, allowing him to hypothetically drone heal all of the divers that are off wreaking havoc on the enemy supports, and that's going to be the all-time low for backline players. Every team's going to have an Ultron, and they're going to be putting it on their Spider-Man, Captain America, Venom, whatever, and they're going to absolutely wreak havoc on the enemy team solo, while you guys 3v5 on the front side. Overall, there's just not enough role diversity to make strategists a self-sustaining role. There's not a support that works in or against every team comp, much less 2, because that's how many a team actually needs. And then you add in, it comes down to the ranked system. And most of the people that play Marvel are actually quick play and casual players, so I think this is actually less of an issue than it's made out to be, but all the people that talk about it have platforms, they only play ranked, yada yada. But the concept of it is very discouraging for support players even if you don't play ranked. Final hits are weighted very highly in Marvel Rivals competitive, which means final hit merchant heroes are over rewarded and supports that rarely have opportunities for final hits are under rewarded. Luna Snow and Rocket are getting insanely low points per win and insanely high points per loss, and while I think this will eventually be fixed, it's a tough scale to balance. And they supposedly did release a little hotfix that increased the value that's placed on the healing stat in the game, but that doesn't really fix the inequality. Let me explain. Final hits are the primary stat that assassins are farming, like Spider-Man, who has the lowest damage done and damage taken in the entire game, besides strategists, with 0 healing, doesn't participate in every team kill, but farms final hits. In a performance-based rank reward system, there's no other metric to actually give him rank based on. Which means supports are naturally going to miss out on those extra points as Luna and Rocket, who get almost 0 final hits a game, and are going to gain disproportionately more as like Cloak and Dagger and Jeff. The only way to actually make this system work is to have performance-based rank system metrics for each individual hero and how you perform against the median at your rank, but that gets into a can of worms. And Marvel Rivals isn't exactly known for having a seamless and balanced rank system. And there's been a lot of backlash and hate surrounding that entire can of worms. But at the end of the day, this is something we all need to realize. The game is still young. It's changing every single day, and I enjoy the game, and I don't want it to have a dying phase like something like Apex Legends did, because Apex is now objectively an awesome game. And Marvel Rivals, for all the things you think you hate about it, is also an awesome game. And if we play the game like normal human beings, it will continue to get better. And not die for no reason, because the community is upset at each other for random stuff that doesn't even make sense whenever you think it through. I think it's time we all took a step back and started having fun again. And even more importantly, I hope you had fun watching this video. I make a ton of Marvel Rivals improvement content here, so if you want to get better alongside me, drop me a subscription. I am a small creator, so liking helps a ton. Comment more down below if you want more improvement videos. Follow me on Twitch if you feel like it, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.